Good evening to our viewers and listeners across Grenada, Carriacou, Petit Martinique, the Caribbean, and the rest of the known world. Welcome to Beyond the Headlines. I'll be your facilitator this evening. My name is Russell John, filling in for Mr. Colin Dow. And last week we began a conversation addressing the root causes of crime and criminality in Grenada in wake of the recent spate of incidences which rocked our nation. This evening we continue that conversation and we lean towards solutions. What can we do and where do we move from here? Joining me in studio this evening, an esteemed panel. I'd love to introduce you. Joining us, Senator Rahman. He is the private sector senator here in Grenada. Next to him, Mr. Well, perhaps that's a prophetic word right there, Mr. Pearson Stroud. He's the head of the Student Support Services at the Ministry of Education. And next to Mr. Stroud, Miss Elizabeth Japal. She's head of the Drug Control Secretariat in the Ministry of Education. Lady and gents, good evening.
Good evening.
I want us to start this evening's discussion in a particularly personal way. Let's go back a few weeks to the point where you first heard that these three young men escaped and that an alleged crime, murder, took place. As a citizen, as a person, what sort of feelings were evoked in you? I'll start with you, Senator Rahman.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, and good evening to you and your listeners, home and abroad. I didn't want to believe it. That's my first reaction. I was hoping that it wasn't in Grenada that happened. This is not of Grenada. This is not news that you hear from Grenada. This is news that you hear somewhere else. So I wanted to believe that it was not in Grenada. And then my second thought was, well, they were already in custody. So 3 of them? Something had to be wrong with that. So those were my 2 first thoughts.
Visceral. I think many people would be able to relate with those sentiments. Mr. Stroud, how about you?
Honestly, from the heart, I felt gutted. I must admit that when by the time I heard a lot of whatever information we kind of have now was out, and what I felt honestly was just I felt as if we were about to take off as a nation. We just came out of the 50 and all of that, and all of the things that were so positive about us, and in my head I'm saying something had to spoil that, somebody or something had to take that away from us, and I felt really gutted by that. So yeah, that's pretty much my natural. That was where I am personally.
Gutted. Definitely another visceral reaction. Ms. Japal, how about you?
Well, at the time I got the news, incidentally, I was out of Grenada. So, getting to a foreign country in South America and getting back on your phone and then seeing this because somebody had sent to say, be careful, look what happened. And that was like the first news that hit me. So instantly my reaction was sort of twofold. 1, 3 young men, 3 of them put their head together. Not one said, let's not do this. And I started thinking, what could have gone wrong? Or maybe where did we go wrong? How is it that these 3 young men, who at one point in their life would have been preschoolers with their little lunch carriers and kissing their parents good day as they drop them off to school. So that hit me. But I think what hit me even harder as a mother, I instantly thought about the parents of these boys.
Right.
And in the discourse over this last 2 weeks or so, I have not heard many people speak about it that way. But for me, how does a mother sleep knowing this? How does she eat? So my maternal instinct kicked in.
Excellent. I think you raise a really excellent point. There hasn't been much discussion surrounding the persons who are affected by the actions, the alleged actions of these young men, and even beyond them, the spate of gun violence that we see going around. It's not just affecting the people involved, but we're seeing that from even just this panel here, there are feelings that are being evoked. Personally, as Grenadians, no, that's within the personal sphere. Putting back on our professional hats. It's 2 weeks thereabout removed from the incident. They say in Grenada we talk about things for 8 days. After that, we're done. Where are you now? Have your feelings changed? Have you been able to sit with this, introspect, and have your views or your responses changed at all since then? Again, we'll start with Senator Rahman.
So one of the things that I noticed is that there is room for improvement when it comes to the way that some of our young people, the way that they look to the police, the way that they respect them, or lack of respect rather. I've looked at some other videos that have been trending on social media, and in one case a police officer had his firearm drawn,
Right.
but down. And that, to me, that spoke volumes to me, that once an officer draws a firearm, immediately a command should come with that, and people should obey that command. And you don't draw a firearm and have it down like that where you are vulnerable. So that's training as well. So I think what I've seen from some of the videos recently is a lack of respect for officers in uniform. And that says something about our society, that we cannot allow for that to continue, because the society, we have laws and order, and the police officers are there to maintain and to enforce the law and order. So that is something that I have seen, that it's a trend, that people are pushing the police and disrespecting them and cursing at them and so on. And we need to take a firmer stand where that is concerned. So enforcement is an issue that needs to tighten up. Yes. And one of the things also, because we are so close-knit, we live in a small society. So a police officer might be a cousin, an uncle, and the ones who are involved in petty crime or on the block, or giving, not following the rules, they might be a family member. So you might have a little weakness there, human weakness, naturally so, when it comes to policing. And policing effectively and applying the full law as it needs to be applied in that particular situation. So I thought that perhaps we need to have a rotation where throughout the ECU we can have police being rotated. So we can have teams being rotated, so that they learn from one another. Because the criminals within the region, and in particular in terms of drugs, they won't know one another within the region. They travel to different destinations, they use boats, they're connected. I'm aware that within the military, there RSS and so on, within the military, there is that sort of inter-island training. But among the police stations, that you will have a team, and you have teams that regularly go back and forth, so they know their peers within the region. And when you have, for example, Vincentian police officers come to Grenada to spend a 4-month stint in Grenada, they're not cousins and uncles of anyone in Grenada. So it will be easier for them to apply the law across the board. So that's one thing I would like to see, maybe as I don't know to what extent it's being done, if it is being done, But definitely I see that from the videos, a lack of respect, and you're not seeing it from the elderly. You're seeing it primarily from the youth. They want to challenge the authority. They want to, and so that is something of concern that we need to, work on.
We'll definitely circle back to this point because I want to push a few questions with regards to how that may play out given the current circumstances. But Mr. Stroud, now that you've sat with this, I know you're a man of introspection.
Okay, so I still feel hurt. Nothing has really changed in terms of what this, I believe, has done to our nation, and it's the perception of persons as to who we are as a people. And the truth is, that's not who we are. That's not really who we truly are. However, the reality is here. What do we do from now? Yeah. So what? So we are here. That is where we are. So what next? I think the what next has to begin with us being honest about who we are. While I wholeheartedly assert that this is not who we are as a people, we have to be honest that our young people inherited a nation that we gave them. Recently PS and I were speaking, and he made mention, and it stuck with me, and we were talking about some of the issues that we have in the school system, and we were discussing about some of the issues, and we lamented the fact that for many parents, we speak, those of us who are adults now, we speak about how our parents brought us up and how firm they were with us, and the fact that we couldn't do certain things, boy, girl, it didn't matter. But what has happened, unfortunately, is it looks as though some of us, many of us, it should seem, have abandoned those very same principles. And we have somehow decided that our children should be our friends. And we forget that we should be parents first. And unfortunately, we are inheriting what we gave them. And so that is where I have been. That's where I've gone. Yes, I feel really gutted still, but I've gone to the fact that we need to seriously look at ourselves and be honest that these things don't just come from the sky. Violence is learned. It's a learned behavior. Aggression is a learned behavior. It is something that is learned from being modeled. And if we look at some of our communities and our societies, the people who are respected are the bullies in the communities. The people who everybody looks to as the leaders are the ones who everybody afraid. And so we've been teaching our children for a long time now that to be effective, to be popular, unfortunately, it means to be in a particular way, and sometimes that means violence, and sometimes that message is sent that to be aggressive is to be effective and I think that's where I am right now. How are we going to begin to seriously address this?
And that is definitely something we want to explore. How do we move on from there? But it is a very powerful statement. Not something that we hear often when, I'm not sure if I can call you older.
Yes.
But when someone of the older generation is willing to say, we have contributed to this, that's a very powerful statement. We'll go over to Mrs. Japal.
Yes, I am still, like Mr. Stroud, in a place, not of disbelief, because I think we had enough information over the last 2 weeks where we can say that this has really happened. We're not in no dream. We are all awake. And I thought about how the actions of a few can affect many.
Right.
And how sometimes, young people, even adults at times, make decisions not thinking about the impact or how it would affect not just the individual, him or herself, but the people around, the family members, the community. In one instance, the fear that, that came over the island, right on the heel of a lovely 50th independence celebrations. So I thought about that, and I say, as I work with young people, mainly in the field of drugs and a lot of young men, and I have to go back to what happened. how did they come, these three youngsters, I still call them youngsters, come to a place where they agreed, there was a consensus to do something this gruesome, this awful? Because I'm one of those persons who believe that nobody is bad.
Right.
And we can all be rehabilitated. You know, I remember one day my son said, that's your problem, you feel you can change the world. And I still believe, I don't think I'm able to change the world, but I'm always a proponent of social change and changing behavior and giving people an opportunity to change. Mm-hmm. But in a situation like that, do I still hold on to that belief? Or would that change? Because a lot of people are hurting. The entire nation of Grenada is hurting. The region is hurting. The globe is hurting. This has brought a sort of visibility to us that we don't want. So for those who have no idea about this small, beautiful island and hearing this would wonder, some people may never choose to come, especially when you look at what led to this atrocious activity. From what I heard, the people were planning for 12 years to do this, all of the plans, and then you come to this demise. I mean, how does one make sense of this? How do people like me who think, okay, everybody deserves another chance and another chance, where are we now? You understand?
Senator Ahmed, what's the way in here?
If I may, you know, the old people are wise, and the old people say you could bring the horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. Mm-hmm. Yes. So all people are inherently good. Yes, I agree with that. But there are some people that make decisions to do wrong things. Mm-hmm. And there are some people that refuse to reform because they benefit from the wrong.
All right.
So when a person chooses that route, that person becomes, I don't want to use the word enemy, it might be a harsh word, but that person becomes apart from our society.
Right.
Because no one of us is greater than all of us. The interest of any one of us is not greater than the interest of all of us. And all of us in Grenada, we are a peaceful people. We have been a peaceful people. We have had times of turmoil in our history. We have come to terms with that. We've spoken about it. You know, we've had services about it. You know, so we are a people that, you know, we see where we're going wrong. We try to fix it, and so on. We have values, certain values that our faith traditions give us, that teach us what is right and what is wrong. In the absence of that, we wouldn't know what is right and what is wrong. So we have that teaches us our moral values. And when people step out of line, we have laws that we have enacted. And when they step out of line to such an extent, we cannot condone it. And we have to take swift action because they will cause our society to be branded in a way that other societies have been branded. And we don't want to go down that road.
Mm. All human behavior is practiced as a result of a benefit. We practice or we repeat things that we get benefit from. Now that benefit may not necessarily be what you and I may consider a benefit, but for some persons, the attention it brings or some form of satisfaction it brings to them would perpetuate the increase of that action. And unfortunately, it is true that in human behavior, any action that is perceived as negative, that is not addressed quickly. In other words, or should I say, any behavior, human behavior, for it to be extinguished in terms of negative behavior, there has to be consequences. And if those consequences are not perceived to be effective, or is not perceived to be stringent enough, the human gets to the idea where, well, no big deal, we continue. It becomes normalized. And unfortunately, the society that we have given our young people is one where we have normalized violence, we have normalized aggression, we have fed on it, whether it's through the music, whether it's through the things that we look at, we have been feeding ourselves on it for a long time. And so so we have become desensitized.
Right.
Unfortunately. And I know we're going into causes again, and I know that's not where we want to go, but it kind of gives an idea as to where we are. But I think understanding the cause, understanding where we are, where we've come from, gives an idea as to where we need to not go or not continue to go. And I think the solutions come from there.
And so there is where I'd like to go. We've become desensitized. We've handed down this situation to our youngsters, and we tend to be up here complaining about the young and the youth and how misguided they are. But as you're saying, we've handed this down. So then how do we resensitize? And what do we do in this resensitization phase? Senator, you mentioned the rotation of the police officers due to the seeming lack of respect that's being shown. Do you think that we're at a place where if foreign entities come onto the island, our young people would be willing to respect the Vincentian or the Jamaican police officer as opposed to our own Grenadian? Do you think the conditions are right?
If it is a policy that is done throughout the Eastern Caribbean Union, yes, we have a lot of the same concerns. We have a lot of similar economies, similar. Today what I did is I looked at crime rates in Dominica, Grenada, and saw what international agencies say about states within the Eastern Caribbean, and they're pretty much the same. Now, when we go to the larger Caribbean islands like Trinidad and Jamaica, you see advisories and so on, travel advisories and other things that come to play. But in the Eastern Caribbean Union, we basically have a low crime rate,
right,
and it's relatively safe. With the exception for opportunistic crime, and you leave something here and somebody might pick it up and that sort of thing. So we are in the same boat, so to speak, within the region, and we are already integrated in terms of CARICOM, in terms of our dollar, in so many ways, and we need to continue to do that.
Right.
There's a statement, no man's an island. If you put one stick and you try to break it, it'll be easier to break than if you put 5 of the same sticks together. So because of our problems are similar, we need to see where the weaknesses are, and we have that rotation within the system. It's just one aspect of it. Another aspect, for example, is to help. We have so many more cars on the road, vehicles on the road, and people flee using a vehicle, right? So usually when the police has to investigate something, they would have to try to get the vehicle number or get some recording and something like that. If, for example, per parish, we would have a different color number plate, same number, but different color, it will be easy for a person to identify that vehicle is from that parish,
right,
and the police can apprehend the individual faster, and that's something very, very simple that you could do on your number plates. We're talking about solutions.
Definitely.
Another solution that comes to mind is that the police need help from the citizens of this country. We have a role to play. Oftentimes we have the politicians, we elect people into power, and we expect them to fix our societal problems. Also, they didn't cause our societal problems, but they have a responsibility, of course, through legislation and other things, but they didn't cause it. We are all a part of that society, and we all have a part to play. So, for example, you have the entire hotel belt. You have almost every hotel or every business in the South has a camera system. Most people have camera systems in their homes today.
Right.
If you can afford it, have 2 camera systems. Have one system for the outer perimeter of your property, and have another system for the indoor private perimeter of your property. Give the police, whichever department is responsible for that, give them the password for your outdoor cameras. Also, so that at any point in time, any time of the day or night, the police can look to see what's going on in that hotel outside of the perimeter of that hotel on Granite Beach, what's going on here, what's going on there. Immediately they reach, is much further than they had just the day before that was implemented. That's a solution.
Right.
And that will help to bring eyes where there are no eyes. You see, you have the proper people monitoring it. And we have to be our brother's keeper, meaning that we have to be agents for peace and to preserve what we have. We have to actively do that.
Right.
And if it means that we have to, report suspicious activity and so on and do so, we have to do it. Otherwise, if you turn away and you do like in other societies and you say, boy, that's not my business, then people, they go figure it out, that's between them and the police, right? And you leave it like that, we will allow and leave that vacuum where, as the brother said, that it becomes normalized. So I think I gave you what you suggested.
I think you're hitting the nail on the head with regards to advancing solutions. And one of the things that I'm hearing is that taking up that personal responsibility. It's not necessarily an active facet of what we do within the Grenadian culture. So, Mrs. Japal, Mr. Stroud, how do we get people to that point where we're willing to be a part of the solution as opposed to simply crying bloody murder?
Yeah, I'm a proponent for the multidimensional approach, interagency, interinstitution, whether it's local, regional, international. Because, like our brother just said, no man is an island. No one entity can't do it. We cannot wait on government to come up with all the solutions. We cannot wait on the police, which is a limited number of police, even if the suggestion is good of having them, throughout doing surveillance. But how many do we have to, properly and adequately do that? But that's another great suggestion. But if we take the whole of country approach,
right,
where each one of us take responsibility for any of the deficiencies we see around us, because I'm sure there's more that each of us could do. If we look and we see things happening, deviant behavior in the society, or you go to juvenile court on a particular day and the numbers are increasing, Mr. Shroud, instead of decreasing the numbers of youngsters waiting for their moment at the juvenile court, these are signs. And if we wait on the magistrate, or we wait on the drug control secretariat, or the councillor, or the senator, just this handful of people, we're not going to get there. So we have to go back to the drawing board. And so we've been doing these are the strategies and methods that we've been using over the years. We have our monitoring and evaluation mechanism. And I think that's one of our deficiencies. A lot of time we implement, so we formulate, we implement, but do we monitor and evaluate success or failure? And that will tell us how well or not well we're doing. And then we take it back, we go back to the drawing board and we say, okay, let's form a coalition. Let's get like-minded people together. Let's see what we can all do to change the present state of affairs. We cannot expect no one group of people to do it. I say in a lot of instances we adopt best practices,
right,
and then we modify and adapt it to suit our individual needs as it may occur. So again, with the young men, they have to serve their time, what the court decides that their crime is, they would have to serve their time. They have committed one of the most atrocious crimes that we could think about. But going forward, the youngsters who are now at the juvenile court, who seem to be on a sort of trajectory that isn't leading to their well-being, we now have, the other three are where they are now. We're not going to turn our backs on them necessarily, but they're this way. But what are we doing about the little ones, 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, who are on juvenile court day?
I'd like to ask a question though. What can we do? If someone listening right now is inspired to take action, what are they allowed to do? What is possible for a citizen who says, you know what, I want to contribute to helping to develop the safety and keep the standard that we have in the nation? What can they do tomorrow morning?
for sure?
We can be honest about what we have in front of us. We can accept the fact that we have a problem. I think psychology, you always recognize that before we can begin to heal anything or solve any problem, we have to first of all accept that we have a problem. And we do have an issue with violence and aggression within our society. I want to, before I answer that, I want for us to go back a little bit because we're dealing with human beings, all right? Human beings are very dynamic, so there are many reasons why people are the way they are. When we look at anger and violence and aggression, there are three components that I think we have to pay attention to as individuals. And research indicates that persons who perpetrate these things, these acts and actions continually, are deficient in a few things. They are deficient in moral reasoning, they are deficient in their social understanding and their ability to communicate, and they also have issues in controlling their anger. Now, if we're going to seriously address these things, we're going to have to look at these human beings and look at them as individuals who are deficient in some areas. While I hear everybody and I hear what the people are saying in terms of the fact that we have to make sure that we address some of these things, we have to remember that we are not dealing with systems, we're dealing with people, human beings that have serious issues in a lot of cases, who've gone through significant sometimes issues within their family structure as why they are the way they are. And one of the things that we can do tomorrow, we can say to ourselves, let's be honest, let's look at the problem, let's be frank with each other, and let's say, okay, all right then, so this is where we are, what do we do now? We have to begin to be honest with each other. I get that we are a beautiful place. Grenada is a lovely place. I don't want to live anywhere else. I don't want to live anywhere else. But we have to try our best to see how we can have a conversation with each other, be honest, and start from there.
Excellent. And so before we continue further, we're going to take our first break and we'll continue this discussion. We'll be back on Beyond the Headlines.
When you need someone to help you to your feet, I'll be that beacon to your highest peak. Oh, I'll be right next to you, no, I will never leave. Come on, take my hands, we got everything we need. Cause you can look to me whenever you're in need. Just call on me and I'll be on my way. I'll be by your side, never to divide, the light that shines our way. Wherever you road leads, we'll make your dreams come true. Next time, next time, next time, next to you.
Nexa Credit Union, with you wherever your road leads.
Your new Grenlec bill is even easier to read and still has all the valuable information you need to track and manage your usage.
Hey Mom, okay, your friendly tech support is here. So you got the new Grenlec bill? Let's take a look. The new bill makes it even easier to see your bill total, the due date, and much more. And take a closer look. It actually is a lot easier to understand. Let me show you. You can still see exactly what the charges are for, but in a great new format, it even shows how the cost of generating and delivering the electricity to you is calculated using your actual usage. And Mom, let Lucy know she can check out Grenlec's new Understanding Your Bill video. Anyway, look who says hi, and see you soon.
Your new Grenlec bill, easier to understand and easier to track your usage.
The
Planning and Development Authority of Grenada, PDA, is enforcing regulations to curb illegal, disorderly, and unauthorized development in several locations throughout the state of Grenada. The authority is concerned that structures mainly associated with vending are negatively impacting the environment, has undesirable public health and sanitation consequences, present obstructions to vehicle and pedestrian traffic, can become projectiles during adverse weather conditions, and generally affect the aesthetics of the nation. The PDA will work along with stakeholder ministries and institutions to effect the demolition, removal, and disposal of structures which fall in the category of illegal and disorderly development, commencing January 2024. In this regard, persons who vend in or occupy such illegal structures are advised to secure their personal belongings and have the structures removed ahead of the planned PDA demolition operations. These actions of the PDA have become necessary to safeguard and protect public health and the environment, ensure the safety and well-being of all citizens and visitors, discourage any future disorderly construction, and encourage compliance to regulations pertaining to physical development in the state of Grenada. This is a message from the Planning and Development Authority of Grenada.
Welcome back, viewers. We're discussing solutions to crime and criminality in Grenada. A continuation of our discussion from last week. We have with us Senator Rahman, Mr. Pearson Stroud, and Miss Elizabeth Japal. Just before the break, Mr. Stroud, you were making some salient points, and I believe Senator has a response to that, so I'll allow Senator to go ahead.
So we were speaking about, thank you very much. We were speaking about what can we do to the people listening at home, the average individual. Well, do what is within your capacity. So if you live in a village and you realize that your neighbor, she's a single parent or he's a single parent and they don't have proper, care, extend that village, it's an African proverb which we hear, it takes a village to raise a child, right? So it's no different in any society, especially in Grenada. We all know one another. We live next to one another. We hear each other's arguments sometimes. So we know if this person is having a problem in their relationship, we really need to reach out instead of being individualistic. We come from a culture where our national dish is oil dung. To make oil dung, one man can eat oil dung. Oil dung is a village thing. Everybody coming together to eat the oil dung. So this is the history. The history is that people came together. They came together to cook. They came together to eat. So when we have problems, why we must be separate and apart? Why we don't come together and solve the problem? It doesn't. You can't expect the police to solve the problems. The police are there to enforce the law. You can't expect the politician to solve the problem. The politician is there to help to make the law, to enact the law. The society has to solve the society's problems. And we have to recognize when this is not acceptable to us, this type of behavior, and so that we provide an alternate example, rather than the drug dealer or the person that is not following the law, but he might have a nice ride and he might be the bully in the community and so on. Provide another option of leadership. And one final thought is that we need to call a spade a spade. We know what is right and we know what is wrong. It does not matter if my friend or my cousin is doing it. If it is wrong, we need to identify it as a wrong, and we don't need to be playing around with that. Right. Because wrong is this brother of sin. Right? And so we need to make sure that we identify and classify what is wrong, what is a sin, so our youngsters understand what is acceptable. in our society and what is not acceptable in our society, and we all need to agree on that.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy that Senator said what I was saying in a lot simpler and much more eloquent way. We have to be honest with each other. I think the other thing that I wanted to add that we can do tomorrow, as you're on break and we were discussing, that the reality is that, and I know Elizabeth and I can testify to that, in terms of working with juveniles, especially who end up in conflict with the law. One of the biggest issues we have with them is that a lot of them are literally idle in a lot of cases. They do not have enough things to do. They're not occupied. One. Two, whenever they may have become in conflict with the law, there's a stigma that is attached to that, unfortunately, and that's a reality. But people like that who end up in a situation need a second chance. One, and they also need you and I to be able to give them an opportunity to prove that they can be better. And sometimes that means giving them an opportunity to maybe work for you, to do something, because when they are idle, they get themselves into problems. And so that's one of the other things that we can do tomorrow morning, is that we could, again, recognize the fact that we are each other's keeper. We are supposed to be there for each other. And if there's a young person in the community who clearly is just really not occupied, and you have something that you can help them with, give them an opportunity to learn some skill, you can maybe be able to pay for it, whatever the case may be. We have to get our young people occupied. And if they're not occupied, they are going to find their hands to do things, because that's where they are, especially in that developmental stage where they are going to be active. They're going to find something to do with what they have.
Excellent points. And finding work, finding things to do, that sounds very industrial. So, Senator, how do you feel about that solution?
Skills. We live in a world today where it is hard to find the plumber when you need him. When it's hard to find when a pipe bursts and you need to get a plumber. The plumber is busy, right? And you're begging him to come at that. But we have areas that we need more people in those areas. We need more welders in Grenada. Trinidad, for example, has a lot of welders. When you look at how they construct their roof, they use 2x3 or 2x4 iron, steel, and you could put up an entire roof in a short space of time because it's nuts and bolts, it's iron, right? It's cheaper as well in many instances. We're talking about building a home. That's a different type of skill. We need our young people to learn new skills, and some of the skills that are needed, like electricians. We need more electricians, machine operators, for example. We don't have. We talk about growth, where 80% of Grenada is hilly. So we have to excavate, we have to have machine operators, we have to have truck drivers, we have to, if we're going to grow, to develop, we have to build. So we need more operators, we need more training in that area, and I'm quite aware that government is embarking on some of those things as we speak. They're working on it. And so we're heading in the right direction to provide some opportunity for young men and women. Another thing that I know that government has spoken about positively, and I know they're working on it, is looking at the age, lowering the age, so that our young men don't have to wait till they reach 25 years old to get a T license to drive a truck. You could get it maybe at, I don't know what age they will decide, but I think I recommended 20 years of age, right? As long as you train before. Sure. So there are so many ways that we can change and make improvements to what we already have to provide opportunities for young people to get a trade, get involved in something, carpentry. When you travel to the Far East and you see what they do with bamboo, how they make furniture out of bamboo, and so on. We have a lot of opportunities and tools to bring in the tools and get the training to do that, to develop different industries in Grenada, and see where. One important thing is that we have to look to see what our children are inclined to. Not everybody could be a doctor and a lawyer.
Exactly.
Right? And sometimes the electrician can make more money than the doctor and the lawyer.
True.
So we see where our children are inclined, and then we push them in that direction. It's not what we want to do, it's what God Almighty is showing us that they are better at and more capable at. So we have to try to identify that early and put them in the direction that they love, and you'll see them blossom.
So from the education standpoint, Mr. Paul, I know you spend time in the classroom, and you're now attached to the Ministry of Education, and you work a lot with youth and juveniles. Were you suggesting training and teaching as a solution? In many cases, though, these boys or these juveniles who get in trouble with the law, they would have been a part of a school system. So if teaching and training didn't work then, what's going to cause it to work now?
Yes, and I'm glad you brought it up, because when Mr. Stroud said keep them busy, I was smiling inside, because I'm saying a lot of times a lot of them are occupied, but probably they're not occupied doing something that is beneficial to them or they don't like doing. So we have to maybe start looking at curriculum reform or adding to the present curriculum, and I know the Ministry of Education is working on that. Like the Senator said, sometimes we want to choose for them what they should do, but maybe they need a wider array of activities. We talk about the skills and vocational, but it's still restricted to the plumbing and the electrical installation and those things. Have we ever really asked them what it is they think would be beneficial to them, what they want to do? How do we create the curriculum? Who sit and do it? Quite often, it's the same powers that be. And we might have a session where we include youngsters, maybe not often enough. But our young people are creative, and they're talented, and they're imaginative, and they want to do something else. So sometimes the mainstream, we think they're occupied, but the mainstream is not working for them. They want to be doing something else. And I don't want us to miss the issue, because as a drug prevention officer, I always look at prevention. And what I look at is called primary prevention, because you can look at primary and move up to tertiary. A lot of times we wait until it's too late, or we didn't address it early enough. So a 3-year-old is taught to, probably use a fork to eat, or a spoon or whatever, or put his toys in a container after playing with it, etc. Or assist his grandmother with something in the kitchen. But then we think, we cannot talk to them about crime and violence. No, that's introducing them to a new concept that they probably don't know about. So I am wondering, is it that our primary prevention initiative, which is prevention, education, are we starting this course too late, by which time some of them would have already been exposed? So prevention for one. We must also look at issues of risk and protective factors. Sometimes children come to us in the classroom, they're neatly dressed, hair well combed, they have their lunch money, and we think all is well. Have we ever most time taken the time to really investigate what is happening with this person, this child? Is this child happy? What about issues of child sexual abuse and childhood trauma and birth trauma, Mr. Stroud? Yes, sir. How often do we take the time to say, okay, what was your, what's it called again, APGAR score? What was your, you do know about the APGAR score? That, well, I don't know if we do it here in Grenada, but when a baby is born, within the first 5 minutes, the baby gets a score of between 1 and 10 for basic things, whether he can grasp fingers or twitch his toes, whatever it is, we don't have time to discuss the details. But children that score less than 4 or less than 3 may have had physical or mental or some form of body defect. When they come to us, do we know that? Or do we expect them to perform as the other person? And again, it brings me back to the youngsters. What challenges did they have as preschoolers when they were at the elementary level? What red flags were seen while they were going through secondary school? How many times did they see a counselor? How many times were their parents engaged when little things showed up that we thought, they're little, they're just restless, they're going to move past that? How did it escalate to that? So we must look at the risk and protective factors. What homes are they in? Are they allowed to come in at any hour, do what they want, go where they want? children are exposed to a lot, and a lot of times we see them as teachers, as caregivers, as ministry officials, and we unawares as to what trauma these children are going through, or what trauma they may have gone through that may now have resulted in the actions. I make no excuse for the behaviors, by the way, but I'm saying there are lists of things that we need to look at when we look at someone who offend.
Right. Go ahead, Senator.
Also, there's a time and place for, we want our economy to grow, but there's a time and place for certain things. So I have seen on numerous occasions, passing by certain schools and so on, you would see banners on the school fence for alcohol, and you will see a tent that they ask for the school fare, and the tent is branded with a very popular name of alcohol or a foreign name of wine or gin or tonic or whatever it is, right? I mean, these are all communicated messages to the children. But they look at that, they know the brand names of these things. They see that you could win a bottle of rum in a rum toss at a school fair. What is that doing at a school fair? There's a time and a place. So when they identify those brands and then they see the adults consuming and behaving in a certain manner, it's just it is learned behavior, right? And so we have to be honest with ourselves about some of our habits. If I have a bad habit, let us say, for example, smoking. If I had a bad habit, thank God I don't have that habit. But if I did, I would hide it from my children. I would smoke because I couldn't stop smoking, let's say, and before I reach home, I put something in, so do what I have to do to make sure so that bad habit dies with me. Right? We have to be aware of what we are feeding to our children, and then also in the radio stations and the announcers and the ones who play music and the type of music that they choose to play. Does the owner of the radio station approve of that type of music? Does he even know what type of music is played on his radio station? Who is approving of those lyrics? And the ones who sing the lyrics for Carnival, do we have guidelines where, yes, we want freedom of expression, but you can't just sing anything and anyhow and you know, in any way and offend women and, you know, like that. You have to have rules with what you can say, what you can't say. Every society has them. We have to identify that this is not appropriate you can't sing about that, or you can't sing it in that way. Okay, you could sing about it, but you have to approach it you can't use certain words like that. So,
I must butt in. The public is listening. So, Senator, as you spoke about the advertisement related to school activities, if I don't clarify this now, I may not get another opportunity, so I must. So, we have a schools policy on drug that has been in existence since about 2002 to now, modified, you know, periodically. Brands, alcoholic brands, and so the policy states that such agencies and so the alcohol industry and so cannot sponsor school events. We cannot have tents at a school activity, and school activity not only meaning the sports meet or so, but if the children are down at Common Park for say like a field trip day or so, they cannot use a tent that has a certain brand name of an alcohol industry on it. So you may not have been aware of that, but the policy states that. So even some people break the law, as you know. I know. I've had people call me, and you would know, and I'm sure I know the school too, because I've heard about it. So some people break the law, but we do have the school's policy on drugs that states unequivocally that the alcohol industry and related affiliations cannot sponsor or be part of school activities.
That's good. So then this raises an issue of enforcement. We mentioned enforcement when we spoke about the police officers, and I know the police is receiving a lot of flack right now, but it seems that there's an issue with enforcement across the board, because if there's a policy, then
enforcement is one, and you're very right, but I know I sound like a broken record, but we are not honest with ourselves. We constantly, and I think Senator was hitting on it, we constantly get to the place where we are living with a double standard. We say one thing.
Just before you continue, we have a caller on the line, so we want to take that first call. Caller, good evening. Welcome to Beyond the Headlines.
Good evening, and I wanted to make a contribution to tonight's presentation. I noted that Senator Rahman alluded to a very important issue that I keep thinking that we are overlooking in our society, and that is, what are the subliminal messages that we are sending to our young people by our actions? I'll give you 2 points in case that concerns me. One is, I notice now there's this proliferation of alcohol-based advertisement on our national television. And what seems so disturbing is the fact that it is targeting young people. Another thing that concerns me is the whole gambling issue. Again, targeting young people in a fun way to engage in that. Think about it. 15, 20 years ago, would you have ever imagined such things being shown on national TV at prime time when news would be given? That to me is a disturbing trend, because today, I don't know if you're aware of it, but you look at young people, 18, 19 years old, and they are already alcoholics. Understand the implication that substance abuse has to crime and criminal mindedness. And I really wanted to ask us as a people to really evaluate, why is it we are advertising substances like alcohol, gambling, an addictive habit on our national TV? These things should not be shown on our national TV. And I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that contribution, caller. I'll let Senator, you go ahead and start the response. I know Mr. Stroud would want to weigh in here as well.
So I agree with the caller. Yeah. And I agree with the caller because in our social studies class, we encourage our children, you need to look at the news. Mm-hmm. You must watch the nightly news. You need to keep up with your current events. You need to know what's going on in society and in your country. Mm-hmm. Well, when we watch the news, so if it has to, we have to have rules and regulations. Right? As adults, you may choose a habit, your personal liking, and you have certain freedoms in society and so on. And you may choose to indulge in different types of, your lifestyle choices are yours, whether you're a smoker or drinker or whatever. But we have to protect our youth, and we have to understand that substances damage our youth, and some of this damage.
So we have another caller on the line. Sorry to cut you there, sure. Senator. Just take this caller and then we'll continue.
Sure.
Go ahead, caller. You're
Good evening, sir. Good evening to guests and hosts. Brief comment, no question. I laud and applaud the contributions made there by Mr. Rahman. Seems to be the one that is speaking most sense there. But at this observation, I'd like to throw to the Grenadian people. There's a saying, the key to tradition is not the tradition itself, but the source and intent and purpose of the tradition. Our traditions have misled us. Many of our traditions have made us more confused than flammers in red ants' nests. It is time to change it. I urge you people, Mr. Rahman, particularly from the Senate, to seriously consider the option of a constituent assembly to refound this nation. I hope that my message is clear. Thank you very much, and have a nice evening, gentlemen and ladies.
Thank you very much, caller. Senator, I'll allow you to continue, and then we'll head over to
Thank you. Thank you to the caller for his comments. We need to make sure that we have the rules like other countries have. I mean, even in the United States, if you buy alcohol, you have to put it in a bag. So you can't just display it. you have to make sure, for example, that there's certain times that you can advertise alcohol and cigarettes and certain things that can be used or abused in this society. We have to protect our youth, and we have to make sure that we don't make it easy for them or easier for them to have bad habits.
Excellent. So we have another caller on the line. Let's take this one. Welcome, caller. You're on Beyond the Headlines. Go ahead.
Good evening. While in the most part, I agree with what is said, one thing I keep over the years not hearing is enough emphasis on individual responsibility. From the time a child is 3 years old to do something wrong, they hide when they see an adult coming, which means she knows wrong from right. Take for the 10 years, 14, 17, 20. Why do we have to beat someone over the head with a big stick to tell them when they're wrong? Then all of us, every one of us, know when we are doing something wrong. Unless you have a depraved mind, you have a very good concept of writing what is right and wrong. Together with all the other solution, how you grow up, how you are taught, how you are upbringing, everything, together with all of that, individual responsibility. You don't need a Bible, a pastor, a priest, a teacher, a mother or a father to tell you when you are doing something wrong. Incorporate with them telling you wrong and telling you all the right thing with individual responsibility. Please, people, emphasize to people, you are ultimately responsible for all of your actions, and what you do will result in a response of necessity. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, caller. Mr. Short, I know this one is yours. You've been advocating all evening, to be honest with ourselves.
I thought that, well, maybe I didn't use those wonderful words, but the reality is that that's pretty much that's what I was saying. Morality is developed in different stages. There are so many people. Kohlberg, I could use Kohlberg here. Kohlberg speaks to the fact that there are 50-year-olds who are still a moral development of a 5-year-old. In terms of how they reason and how they look at life. And so we have to keep and be cognizant that there are some persons who are chronologically of adult age, but morally, in terms of their development, they are still infants. And of course, what the gentleman is saying is true. We have to understand and send that message across that you are ultimately responsible. We have to be honest with each other. Stop the double standards. Stop saying one thing but doing something else. In terms of what we do as a society, we give to our children many, many messages, and what we say is hardly what they listen to. It's what they see us do. And I think Senator was making the point that if, God forbid, that he had that issue, he would hide it from them. And that's the whole point, because they would see it modeled, and when it's modeled, that's what they tend to practice. And so we have to be careful about that. So yeah.
So we have another caller on the line. Welcome, caller. You're on Beyond the Headlines. Caller, I'm not sure if you're able to hear me, but I believe the audio in the background is a bit too loud, so you're coming over a bit distorted. Perhaps you can sort that out and try again. All right. We have another caller on the line. Go ahead, caller. Welcome to Beyond the Headlines.
Good evening. I just want to make a little contribution to the program, right? I think one of the basic problems we have in this society now is that we have a lot of deviant young parents. And I say this because I'm saying as a youngster growing up, when I was growing up, if my father's friend saw me in the street doing anything wrong, I would get a licking from that individual, and then he would tell my father, and I would still get a second licking. Today, if you as a person in society see a neighbor's child doing something in the street, and you try to correct them, you probably have a serious problem where that child may go home and tell his father or his mother, and then they would come with a cutlass or come with something looking for you. So we had to deal with that issue from that level, because today I have seen, young people particularly, there are adults who do it too, but particularly young people. I mean, the way they treat the children when the children do something wrong, these children grow up with this idea that they could do nothing wrong for mommy or they could do nothing wrong for daddy, and that is what leads them into crime.
Thank you so much for your contribution, caller. Again, we'll allow, this time, since it's a bit parent-based, I'll allow the matron of the room to speak.
I agree with all callers I've heard so far. It's your responsibility. Mm-hmm. And that's why I used the analogy a while ago about maybe, like Mr. Schultz said, we didn't come across clear enough when I spoke about primary prevention, meaning teaching them at a very early age. I did say we teach them to use a spoon, we teach them to put away their toys, and if they don't get the treat and all of that. That's the exact point we are making. Mm-hmm. They have to take responsibility for their actions. However, I also spoke about risk and protective factors. So
we have another caller on the line. Sorry again to cut you, but we'll take the contribution from this caller. Go ahead, caller. Good evening.
Yes, good evening. I first of all want to compliment, I think it was your very first caller, because exactly what she said is what has been bothering me and thinking about. My second thing is that last week I listened, that attempted to call, I couldn't get through. But I wonder, when we sit down and we talk and we identify the problems and we identify what happens next, it just talk. And then thirdly, Mr. Rahman made a statement there and mentioned sin and compare it to wisdom, not what is not good. That is true. So human beings, the problem is not the law, because every nation on earth have laws. Even God have laws. But because of the nature of the human, the sinful nature, laws don't make a difference. We have to do what we do. So God made a solution. He sent His Son to die in the place of human beings so that our sinful nature could be changed. But in order for it to change, we must receive His Son into our heart, and He transforms us. It says, we cannot do the thing. If any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. I'm speaking from experience. I'm almost 78 years old. I've been saved since I was 25, so it's gone on 53 years. And so we need the transformation of the begin in the heart of man. And the last thing I want to say is, with this celebration of this 50th anniversary, how many times have we heard the national anthem song? That radio station, GBN, every morning at 5 o'clock, you hear pom, 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 pom. They don't talk about the word, they don't play the word, just the music, as if they're afraid of the lyrics of that anthem. But I want to recommend that the Ministry of Education, if they no longer have the anthem in schools, bring it back in the schools. Let the children know they must be ever conscious of God, because we are human beings, we are sinners, but God has made a provision for us so we can turn to Him, and He changes our heart. We cannot be the same, and society will be so much better. We may not even need the police if we do what God says. Repent of our sins, acknowledge the Lord Jesus Christ, and it says, bring all your cares to Him, because He cares for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, caller, for your contribution. Mr. Stroud, I see you shaking your head.
No, I'm happy. The caller said that sometimes when you bring in some of these concepts, you turn people off. Some people get turned off by it, and so I'm happy a caller would have mentioned the fact. But I think Senator Rahman mentioned the fact that the different faiths and how persons view has a lot to do with how we are and how we see life, and the recognition that there's a higher power that we have to answer to, I believe, takes a significant role if we pay attention to that. And so I fully agree with what the caller is saying.
So we have another caller on the line. Good evening and welcome to Beyond the Headlines.
Good evening to you and your guests. I am thinking that all our morals have gone down the drain because we have young people making children, and I think that we have something like 26-year-old grandmother, so they do not know for themselves, so they cannot correct their children. Now, what I'm looking at is that, let me just deviate a little. We have parents growing up young children now. So you see the children going to church with something so short. They have something tight on them. They don't have, like, the nice frill dress, the nice little thing going up, and what they're putting on this shirt. So by the time they reach that age, only what they know is this tight thing. So they're not able to dress properly. So we need to have people and get other people, to counsel them and let, we get our young people growing up to get back to the morals that we had before, so we need all that. So that's just what I want to see. So
thank you so much for your contribution, caller. And Senator, you may go ahead.
The caller is touching on something that we don't often talk about in society, and that's the way we view our women. Men are visual beings, so we like to see a nice car with nice rims, right? And many men look at a woman in the same way, and they actually speak about her as if she's an object, a thing, a check in that thing, right? Isn't that the language that we use?
True.
So which one of our daughters or our mothers or our aunts is that thing? Would we like that for ourselves? But we have that because part and parcel of our language, right? So we have to move away from that. We have to understand that we need to treat our mothers and our sisters and so on with more respect. One of the ways is through their dress. Their dress. They are not an object to market. Yeah.
All right, so we have another caller on the line, and we'll take that caller. Welcome to Beyond the Headlines.
Good night. This one is to Mr. Ramahan. Mr. Ramahan, you talk about the license for the trucks for the young guys. Right now, all the vehicles now coming automatic. And they're telling people that they have to go and learn to drive stick. And everything coming automatic. You're going to learn stick and you have to go on a bus. For what? All the big buses now coming automatic. If the bus if you're driving for the university, St. George University, you could drive it because it's a private bus. But so long as you have to drive an ordinary bus, you have to drive stick. And I find that is really dumb. There's a lot of ladies that are trying to get into taxis, and there is no ladies driving taxi because they're not putting things in place for them. Because everything is coming automatic. So why they don't put something in place for the ladies who want to drive? Because they tell me I have to not drive in 20-something years first on our thing before they could drive a taxi. What they should do, send all those people who want to Marisho, to T.A. Marisho College to study around tourism and take them in the taxi. So a lot of women, a lot of people have asked for women taxi, but we doesn't have in Grenada. Only two they have, one in NTA and one in another one. That's only two. Bring in more ladies and change the licensing system. This old time thing, you have to drive stick. That's why we're having so much accident. When people go and drive stick, they're forgetting and they're trying to mash two, and it's one they have to mash. And we can create another accident. So please talk about that. Let's change the system.
All right, thank you so very much for your contribution, caller. We're talking solutions to crime and criminality. Ms. Japal, you were saying...
Making the point of social responsibility of parents, guardians and so in the society, but also that youngsters have to be trained to take responsibility for their actions. And then I added to that the issue of risk and protective factors. So if a youngster is in a home where, it's okay, certain behaviors are normalized and is accepted, and we're talking about ills. So you could cause obscenities, you could drink rum, you could smoke, and that's okay. Then there's a greater likelihood, not that it's the only likelihood, because we know that the opposite is also true. We know there are instances where children grow up in a home where there are many risk factors, violence, drugs, crime, and yet this young person chooses not to. And then on the other hand, there are those who grew up in a Christian home, nuclear family, mother and father, all of the protective factors seem to be there, and yet this child still chooses to go the opposite way. So again, it's about deviance, it's about choices, and we are hoping that with all that we are employing, parents, the school system, etc., the society, the positive that we are exposing our children to, that they will make better decisions.
Make better decisions. Ladies and gentlemen, we have another caller on the line. Go ahead, caller.
Yes, good night.
Good night. It seems that we may have lost that caller. Feel free to call back.
Hello, I'm here.
Go ahead.
Good night, everyone. I am just calling to say that some of the problems that we have with these young people would be, I'm seeing somebody's talking while I'm talking. Hello?
Please listen through the phone as opposed to the broadcast. The broadcast is a bit delayed, so you can go ahead and make your comments.
Okay. I'm just saying that good night to everyone. The street corner is always hiring. And what I'm saying is it all depends on the education system that we have now. These young fellas that are doing what they're doing now might have been all those who were unable to pass the common entrance at 11, 12, and they had to leave school because there's no school leaving class. I knew a few young people in the Montu area who are boys only, who are out of school at the age of 13 and 14. There's no opportunity nowhere else for them to go. I am saying no, that the Ministry of Education needs to have somebody monitoring this, everybody going in, because people develop at different stages, and what's happening will be the boys that will drop out. I have followed a boy through school, and he would have been out of school by Form 3. But for the help he was getting, he was able to stay because the school had given up on him. They actually asked me to take him out. And he was one of those that was very successful at the end of the 5 years he spent there. And I am saying that you have to have some manner of opportunity for the ministry to have some report from each form 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 when they send everybody in at 11 plus, because there will be more criminals outside, because the guys who are not developed at 11 will not develop maybe till they get to Form 3, and there will no accountability for them in the schools, especially if they end up in schools, and I'm saying it openly, Wesley College, Boca Secondary, Wester Hall Secondary, and J.W. Fletcher. When the children go there, they cry actually. Wesley College have a crying Form 1 because the students don't want to be there. And what happened to them at 11? The facilities in some of these places need to be upgraded when you're sending everybody. At 11, the children can't even use a stethoscope, they can't use the dictionary, they don't know so many things. And I think that we have to really relook at what happened when they become 11 years and everybody going in. Because we will have more problems on our hands. Too many of the guys are dropping out from school. And I'm giving this instance on the air. There was a teacher in GBSS who...
All right. Thank you very much for your contribution, caller. Mr. Stroud, I'll allow you to respond here as the head of the support services unit.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I think what the caller is basically speaking to is the government's policy of universal secondary school education, and I think I understand the individual to be saying that in their opinion, we might be setting up children for failure. we are aware that there are some students who may attain 11, may do the CPA and would necessarily, based on that policy, go to secondary school, who may not necessarily be at the level for functioning at the level that one might consider to be acceptable. The last group of students, or the first group of students in this new cohort that came in, we did significant work with many of them during the August holiday time to make sure that we put them in a better place, because we had a program where we worked with them knowing that there may have been some deficiencies. They will be followed throughout the system. We are aware of who they are. We are in the process of making sure that that continues actually within the secondary school system where they are, to continue at the end of the school day. We actually going to continue to, we've continued to make sure that they are being met and they are getting the necessary remedial work that needs to be done with them. Here is where the issue comes. If we leave them in primary school, we also going to have a problem. And so the decision was that it would be better for us to send them forward, keeping, yes, we are aware, and that is the reality of any human, of all human beings. Not everybody attains a level of the ability to do the work at a particular age. So sometimes, and it is true with boys, they tend to, especially when it comes to academic work, blossom a little later. And so not until, in a lot of cases, until they're around 15, 16 is when they really take off. And so we are aware of that, and we continue to make sure that we give the necessary remedial help for them. But the alternative is to leave them in primary school. They are going to get older, and what happens, and what we've seen has happened, is that they become frustrated in primary school. You have big boy, big girl in primary school, and you see you see the type of children who are going to Form 1. They're tiny, they're small, and you have these 12 and 13-year-olds. They feel awkward, and a lot of them get frustrated and they don't want to be in school anymore. And so we had to balance it, and the conclusion is that we have decided to go that way, but we are cognizant of the fact that we are sending students who need to continue with remedial work and to help them to get to the place where they are, where we can eventually wean them into becoming independent learners. But we are aware, and we are doing our best to make sure that we try to get that done properly.
Thank you very much. And we have been making the call for individual accountability for your actions, individual contributions.
I really want to say something here about. No, I'm not. Everybody, as Senator said, people have a right to speak, but I've heard some schools named here this evening, and I want to say it to you and to this nation. Those schools, in my opinion, sometimes do some of the most miraculous work in our school system. And we have to be very careful because the teachers in those schools and the leadership in those schools are doing immense work with our children who are there. And I know that we can look back on some of the names that were called, and we can say what we know where some of the children started, and what we see that when they leave is nothing short of miracles in some cases. And so I want it to be made very clear from the Ministry of Education that we do not have that view in the sense that these schools are somehow, I want to make an official statement that this is not what we see, and that's not our perception of those schools. And in fact, we have seen, and the evidence is clear, that in a lot of cases, the miracles that they perform, some of the schools who are known to be by name and prestige may not even be able to do it. So I think I've said enough.
Thank you very much for that, and I think you are right. It needed to be said. We do want to remember that at the end of the day, it's still people that we're dealing with, and
human beings. Yes.
Human beings. Yes. But we are on the issue of schools, and last week we touched on the fact that the large percentage of occupants at the prison are male. A lot of the juvenile delinquents, deviants that we're seeing are male. Is the school system, is the school facility, is is there really a school designed for boys and how boys learn?
Okay, so let me chime in here a little bit. As much as I know there are a lot of anecdotal things that people say, we have to look at what research indicates when it comes to boys and education. Primarily, one of the things that significantly, based on the research, indicates is that because of how we socialize boys, we expect less from boys than we expect from girls. And we send that message across by the way we treat with them. And because there are lower expectations for the boys, they tend to perform lower. In other words, if you give a child something to attain to, they may not reach that point, but at least they're going to try to get there, and they may cut off. What do I mean by that? In terms of our socialization of girls, what are some of the things that we do? Let's be honest with ourselves. Again, I've been saying that from day one. I say let's be honest. In most cases, when we socialize our girls, we are very strict with them. We want them to be dressing properly. We want them neat, comb always, hair always combed inside a particular time. That message tells a girl she needs to be disciplined, she has to be on par and excellent. But what do we do with our boys? Come in whenever you want, dress however you want. What the message we tell to the boy? Yeah, life is okay, it's all right, do what you want. That message tells the boy, well, you can do what you want, you don't really have to be disciplined. When it comes to education and academics, if you're not disciplined, you are going to have issues. And so, based on the research, it seems to be indicating that because of how we socialize our boys differently, we seem to send a message to them and we expect less from them. There's a lot of talk about more male teachers. There may be some correlation, but in terms of the research, it's more really based on what we show in terms of how we socialize our children, what we expect from them. There is the other aspect in terms of the prison, the juveniles, based again on research. Do you know what is the major correlation between all boys and males in conflict with the law? The biggest one, lack of a positive male model in their lives. Let's be honest, our fathers, our men, we have unfortunately taken the decision that it is not our responsibility to be models for our boys. We have unfortunately relinquished that responsibility, whether as spiritual leaders in our home or otherwise, to women and to mothers. If we continue to perpetuate that, we will continue to inherit a society of boys who do not have positive male models, and as a result, they do not know how to be men. Good men, positive men. So you see the research again, whether it's in Grenada, the Caribbean, otherwise, especially within the black communities. And the last one, we have grown into a society of entitlement. We feel that somebody owes us something, and we have continued to perpetuate, and sometimes governments play a part in that, continue to perpetuate this concept of entitlement in the sense that we feel that we can sit down home and government will mine us and give us money at the end of the month. I'm not putting down anybody. Don't get me wrong. There are some people who need that particular type of assistance, and so I'm not coming down on that. But if we continue to perpetuate this concept that government will mine us and government, we got sending that message to our children that idleness is the way to go. I think I've said enough.
Thank you so much for your contributions. Clearly passionate about this, and we are nearing the end of our session. So I'd like to give Mr. Paul you an opportunity to share some final thoughts.
Again, the issue of deviance, poor decision making among our youngsters is a current one that we as policymakers, community activists, parents, teachers, the police, the private sector, everyone, we have to look at where some of us probably went wrong, what it is we could have done that we have not yet done, and how we can make a 360 degrees to change the present status quo. We are a loving, caring, peaceful people. We do not want to be seen as, by onlookers, as people who have no control, who accept mediocrity, and who also accept the present trajectory of the negatives that we've seen in the society. In addition to that, I will always say, and I would end by saying, in all our doing, we are here to serve, each of us at different capacities and at different levels. But let us serve our nation's children and our nation as a whole. While we're doing this service, let's do it with empathy and compassion.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Elizabeth Japal and Senator Rahman. Your final words.
What comes to mind is the term, a reminder is beneficial for the believer. We have to remind one another of what is right and what is wrong. Constant reinforcement. The more you do a thing, the better you become at it, even a bad habit. So we have to make sure that we cut it short, cut the bad habits short early, positive reinforcement, and remind our young men that God Almighty chose men as prophets. All of the prophets in Scripture, or I would say most, maybe I'm not aware of any that are women, but all were men. It means that men don't have a choice but to lead. It doesn't mean that women can't, and it doesn't, in many cases, women are smarter than men. We know that. We just don't say it often enough, but we know, right? But the men have to lead, and that's why God Almighty chose men as prophets. And they are responsible in particular for morality and maintenance of morality within the society and discipline. Men are charged with that responsibility, and also from a religious standpoint, men are the maintainers of women. We look after our flock. And we need to understand our role and our responsibility and train our young men that we are all shepherds, us men, and every shepherd is responsible for their flock.
Thank you so very much, Senator Rahman. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Beyond the Headlines. We've been looking at solutions to crime and criminality here in Grenada. Thank you so very much for tuning in, and we'll see you back here again next week.